Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here again, and especially with the guest that we have today, Vanessa Garde. She's an amazing professional. As a freelancer, she's worked with Placido Domingo, has done movies like Exodus, Misconduct, Tarde para la Ira. She's worked with on films made by, that have casts such as Anthony Hopkins, Al Pacino. She's done a lot of television work in Spain as well as for the United States. She's also a fantastic instructor, has worked for Berklee College of Music, and she's a force of nature, technologist, you name it. She's amazing. So again, thank you very much, Vanessa, for agreeing to do this. And
Thank you.
I think this is going to be a great time to kind of hear about Vanessa's journey through the music industry. And yeah, so let's start. Why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about how you got started in music, and sort of kind of the abbreviated version of what took you from starting to play the piano, which I believe that's where you started. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. To being in the room of making music for movies such as Exodus.
Thank you so much. First of all, Gael, it's a pleasure. So I started as a kid with 3 years old in my family. So my dad used to play trumpet. We used to listen to a lot of music at home, and suddenly, like, I started kind of like getting trained, like kind of like hip training, right? So my dad will start kind of like playing notes, just as a game, right? Being like, oh, which one is lowest and highest? So I started kind of like developing my ear. I started to study at the conservatory with the piano. And at the age of 18, in Spain, we need to decide what to do, if you go to the university or if you go to the conservatory, right? So I decided that it was a time to go to Madrid, to the conservatory, as a pianist. And I studied classical piano as a performer, mostly, for playing the piano, playing classical especially. But I will say that I was always interested in other kinds of music. So I started kind of like playing a little bit of jazz, and playing a little bit of Latin music, and playing a little bit of everything, and also exploring other instruments. Because I think like a musician has to be not only trained on one instrument, but also understand the whole, how other instruments work. So I started kind of like playing a little bit of drums and a little bit of guitar, a little bit of accordion. So it was kind of like getting to know a little bit of pieces of other instruments. So by the time that I got into Madrid, I decided that maybe the piano was not only my only option. And I decided that it was a good time also like to be trained as an educator. So I did pedagogy as well, for conservatory mostly, and then also on history and music sciences at the university, because it was a good complement to understand a little bit better how music works and the history about music and all of that. So that was about like, it took me to study all of these things 5 years. And on the last year of those 5, on the 5th one, there was a course offered by Sky, which is the PRO in Spain, right? And it was about audiovisuals. And suddenly, like, I got this click on my head on getting to know music and getting to know technology at the same time, and work with computers and work with MIDI and all this super techy stuff, right? And it was kind of the perfect combination where everything, suddenly like got together, right? So that was my click time for me, and said, oh my gosh, this is called film scoring. This is what I really want to do with film. So I had a friend who recommended me actually this course, who attended also with me to that course. And he suggested, like, why don't you go to Berklee? I was just like, Berklee College of Music, you mean? Like in Boston? And he said, yes. And I said, yeah, but that's only for jazz, right? And he said, no, check them out. So I went to the website, and I realized that they offered of many degrees and different programs that they had. And suddenly I decided to apply for film scoring. I mean, the first 2 semesters you can pick, right? So I decided to apply and go to the audition. So by the time, like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, they had an audition in Barcelona. So I decided to go to that and try to do my best, I guess. And I got in. So that was a really exciting time to suddenly decide that I wanted to go to the US, that I wanted to study at Berklee, and that I wanted to pursue the film scoring, degree. So I went to Berklee, Boston. I stayed there for 3 years. And that was kind of like an eye-opening experience for me. I was just like, whoa, like this is actually why I really wanted to do always. Because it was a really good time, not only for learning things from teachers, but also to experience people from different, cultures, places, countries, ideas. It was just the whole experience of not only learning the technical things. I mean, the technical things are okay, but you know what? Like, that was a life-changing experience for me, right?
Of course.
And that opened many, 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 many doors. Not only on friendships, but also especially in professional, careers. So I took everything that I could to connect with people that were coming to campus to offer some master classes, with different teachers, faculty, with different lectures that we had. So I was trying to always take every opportunity to approach someone, to learn from someone, to get an email or the Facebook link to someone else, so it was a really good network experience for me. So by the time that I left Berklee, I had a list with people that I wanted to connect later on. And I decided that I wanted to go to LA. Why LA? Los Angeles. Well, it's a city for entertainment. So I decided that it was probably my best bet to get straight from college to the professional world, to connect to someone and start getting really good credits. My main concern when I left Berklee as a student was, how do I get started? How do I maintain myself? How do I make money? Am I just sufficient to live on my own and not ask my parents for money? Like I wanted just to pay rent by myself. So Berklee provided those connections. And of course, I mean, everyone at Berklee got that connections, yes, but I think, first of all, you have to be brave enough to approach someone and kind of like to have a personality also, kind of like to be someone that you want to be around.
Of course. And
I thought that I learned that at Berklee. Like I used to be like super shy and not talk to a lot of people, but suddenly I realized, like, wait, that's sick. Like, we are all in music. We have all the same interests. I can talk to these people on the same language that I have. Not speaking in Spanish, though. Like, I'm not talking about that language. I'm talking about music language, So suddenly it was like another click moment for me. I was just like, oh, we are on the same boat. And I want to learn from these people. And I want to get out to LA. And I want to start working on the film industry, like not doing something else. I want to focus on the film industry, film and TV and music production. It was in the end. So by the time that I got to LA, I start calling and sending emails or Facebook saying to people that I was interested at their work, and saying to them, I love the work that you did on such and such and such. Because it's not the type of approach that you are just like, hey, can we have a 5-minute coffee? Like, people are really busy in LA. Like, the type of industry that they're of that city is just like really fast, really focused, and people just, I mean, they need to drive a lot of, times really far away to just have a coffee, so their time is really valuable. And understanding that side, the approach that you make to them is just like, it has to be really focused. So my approach was, do the research first. Okay, I love your approach on this film, on this mix that you did for this, for example, with Alan Meyerson. I love the mix that you did for Hans Zimmer on this specific movie. I love how you treated the low end in this queue, in this specific queue. So you're starting like to focus really well on things that they have done. And the stylist is like, hey, I will be really interested in knowing more about your workflow. Do you mind if we meet for a coffee for 5 minutes? I would love to, now make you a couple of, other questions about this and meet in person. So suddenly, because that, I don't know, like that's caught their attention.
Well, most people don't approach that way. So in a way, and also I think a lot of people would feel flattered that you are paying attention that closely. So it in a way, I'm assuming that it makes them more open to want to say yes and maybe go out of their way to do that, right?
Yes, and especially because now I'm kind of like starting to be the person, I guess, that I get those emails or those messages, and many of them are, hey, I want to work for you. Will you give me some work? That's the message, right? And then 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, I get another message. You are so rude. You didn't respond to my email. And I'm like, what? Like, okay, this strategy might not work if you're trying to work with someone. Because first of all, they're really busy. And second, like, you want to call their attention, catch their attention, but other things that are not directly like being like, you didn't, do something, It's just like, you just need to get their interest. And their interest to get to know you. And once you have that opportunity to have that 5-minute coffee, that initial 5-minute coffee won't be 5 minutes. It will be probably an hour or 2 hours, because you start talking and you suddenly connect. And from there on, you just keep on growing on that, first of all, friendship. And of course, I'm going to just contact the people that I'm interested on their work, like by truth, like kind of like really interested on their work. Because if I'm not interested on what they do, like, why would I want to work with them?
Of course.
Or for them, So I have to say that I did a lot of really good friendships, thanks to those 5-minute coffees that in the end were a little bit longer, of course. And then always what I will say that it has worked for me is the word of mouth of recommendations. So by the time that I get my first gig, even if it's just offering help for free in the beginning, like even that, or an internship or something, people who rely on you will call you back.
Of course.
Because you put this trust, and in the end, they want to be like, no, I really want, Gael on my team, because he's really reliable. And I know that if I take this project to him, it's going to be done on time. That's really important in our profession. And I don't have to double check what he's doing. So that's another part of kind of like having that call back, for the next gig. So in the end, I think it was kind of like working on those.
So you were in LA, and then when was your first break? What would you consider was like your first project where you went like, okay, this is real. I can consider myself a professional film composer.
So when I got to LA, I started assisting one composer and he was working as of course, the main composer for My Little Pony, the animation TV show.
Okay.
So I started working with him. In the beginning, was just doing some programming, MIDI programming. He was using Digital Performer. There was not a lot of people using Digital Performer, assisting Digital Performer, except the people who came from Berklee. And he needed someone who will configure his template using also VN Ensemble Pro. By that time it was like 2010, this was. By that time, the platform of VN Ensemble Pro was in the market for probably a year or 2 years maximum. And I used to beta test for Vienna Symphonic Library. So I got to know the program really well, really early on. And that was kind of like opening, like it opened many doors because suddenly like composers will start using that system and not many people knew about it. So stay ahead on, you know, the technology side,
which
because
I know
that will open many doors. Yes.
I know that has been something that has been kind of at the forefront of what has opened doors for you pretty much in everything you've been doing, right? So the fact that yeah, I mean, what some people that for you guys watching this, you know, she's first and foremost a complete musician, but also a composer, an orchestrator, but equally and probably as profoundly a technologist, right? So, you know, and I think that in a way is what has opened doors for you, like you're saying, but it has continued to do so even now, correct?
Yes, correct. I mean, kind of like knowing the technology side of things puts you on really good positions if you are the composer of a project, because you have to lead a team and you have to work, like know the whole process of how it works. So you can actually provide guidance and provide kind of like info that is really, really precise to everyone, every member of the team. On the other side, if you start as an assistant, I started myself as an assistant for many composers. And that was how I got started, like being part of a team where you start learning all the tips and tricks and being around knowing, oh, that tip, interesting. I'll put that on my notes. And then you start kind of like picking up ideas from different composers and how they work until you make your own recipe and all these things, right? So, because it's important that if you start as an assistant, you start kind of like gaining experience and you start kind of like living inside the whole process and then learning like little by little on how you get there. And I mean, it's funny because I suddenly realized, wait a second, about 2 years ago, I think now I'm ready to start composing more. Because it was like, I think it was almost 50 films that I have worked on until I decided that finally was the time to finally get, you know, into film composing on my own. So until that, you know, 50th, you know, film, and many people decide to go to compose films earlier than that. Maybe they assist for 5, 10 movies, and then they decide to get on their own. But for me, it was kind of like slowly, you know, learning the process and have the experience of working with many composers. And this is something important for, I think in my case, that I didn't stay only with one. For me, it was important to get to know the ins and outs of different systems on how to do things.
Of course.
And then, you know, as I said earlier, like pick up the what I consider the best parts of it and make my own, you know? Of course. So it was a really good experience. Yeah.
This is, I think, a good leeway to sort of maybe you can speak about from when you started to where you're, you know, now working, how you've adapted kind of the process of working, and more specifically, how you've integrated your life around the working environment. But what I mean by that is it's a different thing to work in the studio than it is to work from your home studio than it is to be traveling. And I know you do a fair amount of traveling. So how has your kind of setup at large and workflow changed from the very beginning when you were helping other composers to set up their own, setups to now that you are between Madrid, LA, and elsewhere? How does it look like, and how have you adapted to these different modalities of work?
That's a really good question. So in the beginning, probably what I will say is always be flexible and be adaptive to what is coming, because there's not only one solution. So I start only with a laptop, getting into the studio of someone else and spending a lot of time there. So I was kind of like pretty much like not at home at all, almost, always on the studio of someone else. While the composer was composing for the show or for the film, right? And then I will travel with that composer sometimes to the recording sessions. depending on where they were. Sometimes we will do everything in LA and record everything in LA and mix in LA, but many times we will record remotely. So that was a really good experience also, like to record maybe like in London, Vienna, or Budapest, or Bratislava, right? And learn the ins and outs of doing remote sessions. That was another, good point to be around for learning all these things, to be really effective when you record online. And then I will try to get into the mixing sessions as much as I could also, just to learn, like kind of the fly in the wall, right? So that will be me. But I always consider that I should save a little bit of money to invest on my own equipment, because if you always rely on the composer system or the clone system that he might have or she might have, right? You are always locked to go to their places and to work only for them because you are using their rig. But I always try to, get my doors open and get other projects going, and always invest on sample libraries that I will consider that they are kind of like top of the line at the moment, and invest on more gear, right? So I invested on a second PC that I will have host a lot of libraries. Also like to learn the Vienna Ensemble Pro thing. But then the more you start considering the flying part, so then I will come visit to Spain, right? While I was living in LA. And suddenly I realized if I have this PC here, I'm always locked to just my laptop. So I need to get a decent laptop that kind of like where I can work with more stuff. So you are kind of like upgrading little by little, not only your plugins, your sample libraries, but also your gear, right? And always invest, like leave always at least, let's say 10% of what your income is, always save it that for new materials and new equipment, because that is going to kind of like raise the bar for you. And you have also a good goal of learning something new, learning that sample library that is, is the top of the line at the moment, and your markups and your markups will sound a little bit better, right?
Of course.
So have always that push. I always consider that the push it was important for me on the equipment side of things, and on the investment part of things in music. Then little by little, like at some point while I was in LA, I got a faculty, Victor Mendoza, who came to LA and said, hey, Berklee is considering opening a new campus in Valencia, Spain. Mm-hmm. And I know that you are a super, super techie person and you love technology. And I think they might have, they might be looking for someone like you. So I said, so maybe this is a good opportunity to come back to Spain. So I started kind of like considering, like, should I move back to Spain? And because I was also like missing my family and missing my friends, and LA, I have to say that it's a really competitive city that is great for go and work. But for me at that time, it was not the perfect city to live in, because I started like feeling a little bit alone and I wanted to come back home. So I said, so maybe this is a good opportunity to come back to Spain and work on education, because that was one of the other things that I studied. Like I studied like pedagogy and I love teaching, and it was a really good time for me, I think, for getting inspired by students who wanted to learn more and focus on technology. So it was kind of the perfect combination of things, right? So I kind of like touched base with Berklee, and they said, will you want to do a interview for this position that we have at Berklee Valencia? So I went, did the interview, and a few months later I started working for Berklee. So I think I thought also like that was a good move, also like to come back to Spain, touch base with the industry in Spain after the experience that I got in LA. It was not the same, let's say that, I graduated from Boston and then I come back to Spain, and then everyone will be like, okay, so what was the last film that you worked on?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're always kind of like, either they go by recommendations or they go by what you have worked on lastly, like the last project that you have been working on. And then at that time, it was kind of the perfect move because I was just like, oh, I got this, and this movie into my, portfolio, and I got a few recommendations. Because when I was living in LA, I met Roque Baños, who is a really, really good film composer. And he knew that I was coming, so he introduced me to Alberto Iglesias, the composer for Exodus. Mm-hmm. He introduced me to Lucio Godoy, to Federico Husit also. So I met a bunch of different composers in Spain who were actually doing a lot of the work in Spain, and suddenly just got like instantly, connected with this industry. So that industry actually kind of like helped me getting to know more about all the ins and outs of the industry in Spain. And then those composers that they were kind of the top working ones, right? Getting to know my work, so that in the end they will end up, recommending me for different projects. So all of this is just like super, super connected, one thing with the other. In terms of adapting, the question that you made on the tech side of things, I consider that I will have to spend a little bit of time on the other composers' studios, but also in my home, and start building a good home studio. And I'm so thankful that I did that. Because right now with the whole COVID, like I'm super lucky like to be right now sitting at a desk where I have everything I need to compose like a full movie if I want to. So I can stay at home. I have a home rig that I can work on, and also really important, I have a portable rig, which is a Mac Mini and then a mini PC. So the Mac Mini has 64 gigabytes of RAM, and the mini PC has 64 gigabytes of RAM that I can take on my backpack. I use an iPad as a monitor. I have a lot of kind of like different controllers for just have a full rig that I can take with me on an airplane, and it has everything I need. And it's basically like cloned with the stuff that I have here at home, with the same software, same libraries, same everything.
So really, the main difference is the fact that you don't have a full surround system that you carry around, obviously. Mm-hmm. But essentially, what you're saying is all the software and the gear that you have in your home studio where you work most of the time, you carry it around in a backpack these days, basically. Yes. And also, I think that the interesting thing of hearing you say this is that for a lot of people, there's this idea that still that, and I know that it is still the case for some movies, but that, in order to make a full feature soundtrack, you would have to like be in Abbey Road or in Air Studios or in Capitol. Yeah. To conduct these large sessions, and what most people don't know, where you also are very well versed is that now you can basically do it, not just to any laptop, but with a professional grade rig. Yes. And skills, and that's how it's done these days.
Yes, and what I will say is, considering budgets, I'm very aware that I'm not an A-list composer yet. I still need, like some experience, to go. But what I have seen, like even like with B-list or A-list composers, that they're cutting up budgets, and they're also like having to save time. And this is really important. Think about this, one thing. So let's say that you're a composer who is working in France in a movie, and you get that, and then you needed to deliver a full score in 5 weeks or 6 weeks. And then you start composing, and you get stuck in the first week, trying to find ideas. And then kind of by the time that you get on track, it's already week 2 or 3, right? And then you continue composing, and then suddenly the director listen back again to some of the cues and asks for revisions, or they decided that they want to reshoot something and change some picture changes. That requires you to change also the music. So by the end of the process, where you are already on week 5 or 7 or 8, you are running out of days on your plan to go record So let's say that you are planning to go and record in Bratislava or Vienna. You need to fly at least a day earlier to make the setup. You will need to get your score and parts ready at least the day before so they can print on time and put it on the stands and all of that. All of that takes days. I mean, takes you days off from your actual work of composing. And it's not that you can just be composing until the day before, because you need to send it to the orchestrator and to print the stems to get ready for the mixer. And there's a whole process that takes time, right? So with these online sessions, what we are achieving is that we don't have to fly, so you can save that money. Because many times the composer doesn't fly on its own. Like they will take their assistant, they will take the engineer. So it's like 3 people flying at least. If you buy the ticket the week before, it's expensive.
Of course.
Or it has too many layovers and you don't want to do that. You want to go straight, like fly straight, right? So it's even more, right? Then hotels. Then is there a big time difference from where you live to where you are going, right? So, I mean, you start kind of like adding all these expenses, and by the end of the process, you find out that, wait a sec, like, why don't we record remotely? Of course, you need a really good, orchestra and contractor to find really good musicians. But many times, just finding those people that you can rely on and that you kind of like constantly work with them. How do you communicate with them? Are you spending a lot of time just going back and forth on between takes to give comments? Like, no, like we, like working with Budapest, for example, like we did this process of writing on Skype comments while they play. So by the time that they hit stop on Pro Tools on take 2, they already have comments. So the person who is conducting, in most of the cases, is Peter. So Peter will read in English those comments and like say that to the orchestra in Hungarian. So by the time that he has said all the comments, we can start already with take 3. So all the time that you save just doing that, if you're really concise and organized on getting the comments right. So many people will be like, oh, let's call them. No. And then they start kind of like flying, papers and be like, oh, no, on page 8. And then they go to page 8 and like, F sharp, but this phrase, like, so learning to be concise and precise about your comments is key when you do remote sessions. So when I write, I would be first violins, bar 15, dynamic goes from piano to mezzo forte, please. And then you set 3 elements. Then the instruments that you're referring to, where they play, and the instruction. And then suddenly, like for Peter that reads the comment and gives the comment to the orchestra, is super fast. Whereas if, I'm nervous and I want to call them, like I might just waste 2 or 3 minutes, that suddenly the people are just like sitting on their stands, waiting for that. And at the end of the session, all these 2 and 3 minutes comments, they sum up.
Of course.
So instead of having a 3-hour session, maybe a 4-hour session, you because you are really, really precise, you can do all of that in 3 hours. And you pay less, because you're having...
And you save money. And you save money, of course. I mean, it's all what you're talking about is insightful, because I think a lot of people don't know what it takes to, for example, some people might even know that the remote sessions are done for film, and how they happen. But along those lines, maybe I think that there's a lot of glamour associated with the profession, and most people don't really know what it is actually, especially these days, to be a film composer. So maybe if you could, also in a very sum up way, what does a typical day look like for you? I mean, especially these days that you work at home, despite the occasional COVID crisis, how does a day of a composer look like? And it's okay to include going to the premiere, but I think that's people just go like, well, probably they are sitting in a field and they wait for inspiration and they hang out with the stars, and then they, write the music and then show up to give it to the musicians. They play and it sounds great, and then they, you know, get the Oscar and go and go to the red carpet. So you know, maybe could you like, what's the process, you know, of a typical day?
So usually I will wake up really, really, really early. So something important for a film composer, I think, is to understand your time frame on when are you more productive during the day, because you want to save those hours for yourself.
Okay.
Because I mean, if you look at your day, usually it will be like 5 a.m. I wake up, start composing, because it's a time where no one is calling me on the phone or sending WhatsApps or messages or whatever it is, you know. So for me, like that period of time of 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. is the more productive. So I will try to do all my creative work when I'm fresh. Then at 8:15, I will stop and have breakfast, and usually like do a first pass of emails and kind of like the more office work. And I will say that nowadays, a lot of the work that a composer has is also all the office work and the networking side of things. So it's not about the talent. I mean, the talent is kind of like, it has to be there, or maybe not sometimes, you know. But a lot of times it's like, how you understand the process? Can you deliver on time? How do you communicate with the director? Are you meeting their expectations, and what are you delivering, you know, as a result? So it has to do a lot with that, much more than how well versed are you in harmony or in understanding how the clarinet plays, you know. So yeah, we'll have kind of like breakfast, do a little round of emails around 9 a.m., do another pass of work until 11:30, more or less, and then have a coffee break. Usually I will touch base also with the team. So if I'm working and I have an orchestrator or programmer that is also like doing some extra work on those kind of like the 10 a.m., 9:30 to 10, I will have a first, you know, break, or the second break, I will kind of like try to communicate with them during that time. Because I think it's really, really important that when you have a team that everyone knows, especially working remotely, like everyone on their own, you know, on their own, that they know exactly what you are looking for. Now I will stop for lunch around 1:30, 2 p.m. In Spain, like we do that pretty late, actually.
Of course.
Then rest a little bit and then continue during the afternoon. And the afternoon is usually afternoon night, because think on something like when you work on a film score, we are the last part of the process. Like they have done all the shooting and they have done all the you know, editing on picture and all of that, but they do have a premiere date that they can't miss, and they need materials, of course, in advance. So we have pretty strict deadlines, and they don't move them. Like they are like super, super strict. But there's some kind of like getting pushed on dates of, oh, we're running late on la 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 la, and we're running late, and suddenly the composer comes and it's like, oh, you have 6 weeks to do the whole thing, right? And then we're like, oh, panic mode. And panic mode for us, it has to be like, okay, let's make a plan. And for film composers, we need to work with our agendas and schedules really close to us. Like I cannot get out of planning. Like if I haven't composed my X minutes of music that I had to, I need to kind of like punish myself by waking up earlier the next morning and making sure that by 8 a.m. I'm always on track on my schedule. Because if I start kind of like missing my own deadlines, then by the end of the process, I'm not getting into the deadline, right? So I have to be a little bit strict about how much music I do every day. Also, like it's important, like for me, like try to exercise and have some moments to just disconnect, spend a little bit of time, or either talking to family, or you know, like with my partner, with my boyfriend, or like trying to always also like disconnect and have always trying to get a fresh mind. Because I used to spend like, I mean, you know, like probably like 5 years ago, I used to spend like time by working like crazy, like nonstop. And by the end of the day, you realize that maybe you could have done the same. You were more productive during less amount of hours, but more focused. So what I have trying to do more and more and more is take more breaks, spend time also kind of like disconnecting, because then the time that I sit on the computer is for really, really compose and be focused. And also another thing that I will say about my day is that I will try to spend time doing research on projects that are coming. Do they need a composer for them? Who is the agency that takes those projects, or who is the production company that is doing those? Do I have a direct contact, or can I have someone that, you know, gets involved in the project and maybe can, you know, put my name on the table, you know? So kind of like all the research part of things also are part of my day, because I mean, it's fine if I'm working on a movie, but probably in 2 or 3 months, I need another one. And I will have to do my research on what is coming next, so I can do one thing after the other, right? Also, I would say that for me, it's really important from time to time to also like have some breaks of not composing. I may be working on a project where I'm maybe like mixing for someone else, or maybe orchestrating, because that leaves to me some space for focusing on other things. It's really hard to be on the fire line
all the time.
All the time. There are some people I think that are made to be on the fire line and they enjoy that. But probably not me. Like I enjoy that for a little bit of time, but then suddenly I need a break. I'm like, oh, I need to feel stress-free for a couple of weeks working on something else. And then I will do another project that doesn't require me to be, you know, on that front line, and maybe do other tasks of the process, but not being the main composer. And that to me also is refreshing sometimes. And it kind of like makes you learn other things about the process and work with other people. That's the other thing. Because if you always are on the same position, you have an established, you know, system that it works for you, but doesn't expand your frontiers too much, right?
Of course.
So getting to know other parts and getting to know other people on the process opens up other doors. So I'm always kind of like trying also to stay open on that sense.
Can you maybe kind of shifting gears a little bit in the conversation? Can you maybe recollect an experience in the studio where, because you're talking about a lot of organization, a lot of planning, everything is like very regimented and saving time in the sessions and whatnot. And it sounds actually opposite to what one may think when you're talking about something that is supposed to be very creative, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm curious to hear if there's been a anecdote in the studio that you remember where spontaneity ended up sparking something that was, you know, amazing sound or feature ended up being the feature signature part of a cue or the whole movie or something like that.
Yes, I mean, probably I'm a little bit of square in some sense, but in the other hand, I will say like two things come to mind. One experience that happened in the studio really early on, about 10 years ago, I think, or no, 8 years ago, I think, I got called in a session to do some assisting, and I showed up. It was a really, really big name, and the musicians were rehearsing one arrangement where the arranger was not in the studio, because this was in Spain and the arranger was in the US. And they started playing before the artist will come, and it was just not sounding really together. Like, it was just like those moments that you're like, oh, something is missing, I think, right? So suddenly, like, I mentioned to the engineer and the producer, it's like, maybe they need someone just to conduct, you know, just to feel connected, a little bit more connected and a little bit more engaging between themselves, because they were like too separated and too. And suddenly like he looked at me as like, do you want to be the conductor? And I said, whoa, like that was the time of, of panic, being like, oh my gosh, like if I don't do well on this, I might be really in trouble. But if I succeed on this, like if I do well, that is gonna be like, oh my gosh. So I said, you know what? Let's do it. Those are the moments that suddenly like that squareness just goes away, and I'm just, let's see what happens. Let's see how we feel about it and see if it works, because musicians, we have this, weird sense of when we get into the community side of things and we start kind of like connecting, suddenly everything gets into the next level, right? So I thought that it was the time to give it a chance. I'm not a professional conductor myself. I do conduct sometimes my sessions and other sessions actually. But I don't consider myself like the perfect, conductor. But there is something about these connections that happens between musicians that suddenly being in the room with A-list, musicians is connecting between themselves and be part of it, suddenly like took everything to the next level. Then the time where the artist came, and the artist, by the way, was Plácido Domingo. So he came to the studio and we were rehearsing, and I was like, oh, who's that? It's like, oh, it's Vanessa, like she's assisting on the session. And then suddenly like, I got like the face of being like, oh, get out of here. So I was just like nervous, trying to just get out of my place because the conductor's seat was not mine. I was just trying to make it work in the rehearsal, and that was it, right? And then the artist said, like, Plácido said, no, stay, you just stay. I conducted during the session then, and it was a good proof for me that sometimes you have to be brave, and you have to also like feel challenged by what you have, because if we have everything under control and everything really, really squared, you will be correct, but you won't take things on the next level, right? So I thought that probably like brave decision of somebody like being on the conductor's seat made my day completely, and suddenly like open like one idea in my mind that if you don't have those pushes sometimes, like everything will be like too comfortable, like what's the point,
It's so accepting to go outside of the comfort zone, basically.
Yeah, totally. So that was one. The other one will be, and this is a kind of like a funny one. So 2 movies ago, so I did one movie where the director was obsessed with the ukulele.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay, let me find out what the ukulele library, the best library is, and we'll use that. And then he came to one of the meetings and say, but you're buying an ukulele, right? And I'm like, how am I gonna buy an ukulele? And he said, yes, you should buy an ukulele. So I got an ukulele. And then suddenly I was just like, oh my gosh, now I need to learn the ukulele for writing the entire film, because he was obsessed with the ukulele. So I started kind of like, like learning the ukulele, recording myself with videos while I was experimenting with it. Because I was just like, oh, this is great, like this position I like, and this motif. So I will start recording myself, but not only with audio, but also with video, because if not, I won't remember the positions.
Of course.
So I recorded everything with video. So by the end of the process, I will ask my orchestrator to put everything into C values, and then I will correct everything and then send it to the professional ukulele player. And suddenly, like, he calls me, and he's just like, I know what you're doing. And I'm like, I recorded all the videos for you. Like, everything is in the videos. It's like, wait a sec. Let me go to your studio and we'll look at it. So he came, and he's like, can you play this? And I pick my ukulele up and start playing it. And suddenly it's like, wait a sec, what tuning are you using? And I'm like, so I bought it on Amazon, and it came, like, of course, out of tune, but I took the notes where they are supposed to be like closer. So I have them out of tune. So my whole film was composed on an ukulele out of tune, like not completely out of tune. It was On tune.
Yeah, but not the, yeah. So a different tuning, alternate tuning.
Yes. Yeah, so the whole movie in an alternate tuning. So then by the end, oh my gosh, it was like so embarrassing because then the player was just like, am I supposed to replicate all of this? And I said, well, no, but yes. Or, I mean, let's try to. So in the end, it was really cool because then the ukulele player got the idea and he transformed all of this. So sometimes like not being that square also helps creatively.
Of course.
Because I'm very aware that the score won't be the same, sound the same if I will compose that on the piano. So again, like getting out of that comfort zone and then suddenly like don't have everything planned.
Of course.
Get you into results that you don't expect.
And did he end up performing the score on the alternate tuning or actually had to? No. Okay.
No, because he was confused by it. He was like, no, but this just doesn't sound right. Because he would look at the score with the notes and suddenly the positions were all over the place. So he reinterpreted them close enough to what I had originally sonically. But yeah, it was kind of like an embarrassing, moment for me. But at the same time, I was just like, you know what, like something happens for a reason. And in the end, it was good that this happened, actually.
Of course.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, all very, very insightful. I think that we're ready to wrap it up. One more question and then the rapid fire questions that I like to do. The last question would be if you had one single piece of advice, and I know you've already kind of touched upon several things and given, indirectly given advice to the people, seeing this, but if you had one piece of advice for somebody that is wanting to becoming a film composer, and is just starting, what would that be?
I would say investigate your own voice. I hear many film composers trying to imitate what Hans Zimmer is doing, the sound of John Williams. And the reality is when production companies looks at the reel and the portfolio of people are looking for things that are really special. And you get a chance if you click and connect with that. Because if they're looking for something that is a little bit less specific and that they're trying to copy something else, they can always get to a library, cues and license a bunch of them because they don't have a lot of meaning to them. But the moment that they are looking for something special, then they look for a special composer. So my suggestion will be try to investigate on what are you good at and what you can explore that is new and it takes your language and your music as unique.
Okay.
Of course, we need to, also like be ready to be able to say by you wake up at 9 and you get, something that it has to be done at 12 and it has to sound on the style of something. You have to also like be trained to be effective and be like, oh, I need to do this type of music on this amount of time. Yes, but what I think you're going to feel more proud of is what you have done with more originality and something that has a little bit more meaning to you than just copy someone else, style. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, to wrap this up, I like to do something that's these rapid fire questions, which Vanessa hasn't seen. And the dynamic is very simple. You just got to answer with one word or one short answer, the first thing that comes to mind, okay?
Okay.
So digital performer or Pro Tools?
MIDI digital performer, audio Pro Tools.
I'm sorry?
Digital performer for MIDI, Pro Tools for audio.
Okay. Live recorded instrument sessions or programming?
Live.
Navarra or Los Angeles?
Navarra.
Exodus?
Intensity. Yeah, intensity and also a huge learning experience.
Reggaeton?
Hate.
Okay, wow. Netflix?
Future.
Late night work?
getting ready for a deadline. Coffee.
Ghostwriting.
Try to avoid it.
Unless,
excuse me, sorry. Unless they are paying you really well and you really need the money and you feel like it's a training for what is coming. But please don't make ghostwriting as your main income forever, because then you will, you won't be proud of it in the end.
Yeah. Okay. Abbey Road.
Legend. Oh my gosh. Studio 2 sounds like magic, an orchestra. Yep.
And Goyas.
Glamour, but I will say, we say in Spanish postureo. How do you say that in English? Like, kind of like...
Showing off.
Showing off, yes. So the reality of a life of a film composer is on the studio, and I think what it has to be more of your goal is not necessarily about the red carpet, so that all that glamour thing, I mean, it's okay for a few experiences, but it's, at least for me, it's not my goal. So,
and I think that that's a really nice way to end this, because I think there's a common thread with all these conversations that I've been doing, which is that all of the people that I've been talking to are immensely successful, but the one thing that they have in common, and it comes down to what you're saying right now, is that it's more of a passion for the music itself and the craft than it is, anything else, the red carpet, the money, the fame, you name it. So that's a really nice way to end this. And I think that your level of dedication and passion in what you do, whether it's the composing part of it or the technology, is something that is, first of all, at a personal level, it's been an honor to be a witness of that. And I think is a great example for frankly, anybody else that already works in the industry, because some don't actually quite get that, as well as people that are trying to get into it. So thanks again, Vanessa, for spending the time and sharing your thoughts and a little bit of your journey. This means a lot, and I hope that one day we can bring you here to Abu Dhabi.
Thank you. That will be an immense pleasure. Thanks again for all your dedication and time, Gael. It's really an honor. Thank you everyone also for watching this video. I hope that it is a little bit helpful, or maybe it has opened some sparkles on your creative side, or your techie side or something, and that makes you curious about opening other doors. Also, I would like to end up also mentioning something that is also important to me, is don't stop learning, and that eager to learn more things and be passionate about what you do is what wakes you up, and not necessarily what you said about the red carpet. So be really aware of those, being on top of things, learning new things, and that's gonna make your day, and not necessarily having an Oscar or an Emmy necessarily. That it's really well for the the show up part of things, but shouldn't be, at least for me, the important goal on your life. So thanks again.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. And to learn more, just like Vanessa was mentioning, stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one of these. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.